When you're at your life's end and given another chance to reclaim what you've lost, would you take it? Well, if you plan on traversing through treacherous lands and harsh weather conditions for that goal, Jotun Valhalla Edition for Nintendo Switch just might be the game for you. Emphasis on might, as that's why I'm here, Phantom Z2, to help guide you with this review. Also, great thanks to ThunderLotus Games for providing Source Gaming with a review code. Now, let's find out if Jotun is good enough to impress the gods. The story begins with the red-headed Thora, a Norse warrior sailing through treacherous seas and strong winds with her men until her ship crashes and sinks, not only killing her soldiers, but her as well. However, as she descends into the sea and is almost swallowed by the goddess of the sea, she awakens with her axe in the borrowed mound of Yggdrasil, the world tree. Now it's up to her to travel through several regions across several worlds, gathering runes across each world to release his Jotun, an elemental giant that Thora will need to defeat in order to impress the gods and rise up to Odin's challenge, allowing her to gain a second chance at life. The story expands itself, not just while you progress through the game, but also within each level. There are traces of statues, scenery, and illustrations that further elaborate on the lore and world of Jotun. However, after you've defeated a Jotun and are transported back to the Void, essentially your hub, Thora elaborates on her personal life before death, allowing the player to build a connection with her and figure out why her trials and tribulations are so important. Although I don't want to spoil it, I will say the secrets hidden within Thora's past are very engaging and interesting. The world building is also cleverly done, as it's integrated with the tasks that levels have you perform in order to reach the runes. The only issues I have in regards to the story is that the storytelling isn't in English. It's supposedly in Icelandic, which is actually very interesting as it tries to keep true to the Nordic backgrounds as close as it can, but having to read subtitles is a bit distracting during gameplay. Also, when returning to a level you've already completed, dialogue will repeat, which can be annoying since there isn't a way to skip it. The gameplay at first is very simple. You move around with the control stick or D-pad, and you can perform a dodge roll with the B button. It doesn't grant you a lot of distance, but it does help in avoiding some close attacks. You can perform a light axe swing with the Y button and a heavy overhead swing with the X button. And if you want to take your combat even further, you can combine the roll with a light swing, which will allow you to perform a roll slash. Now, as these are the basic controls for you to traverse across rivers, lands, and other areas, you'll also be fighting against other warriors, nature, and having to traverse around some lava, harsh winters, and other natural hazards. The regions are as such: nature as your starting area, and then 4 other regions that you're able to travel through any way that you want. The caves, the winter region, storm region, and the fire region, with each region having 2 levels within them. Once you've found the 2 ruins of each region, the gates to that region's specific Jotun are open. But when it comes to fighting the Jotun, your axe will not be enough. Throughout each level are not only the runes, but god shrines, Ethan's Apple, and Murmur's Well. Ethan's Apple increases your max health, and Murmur's Well are able to be found within levels and before bosses, acting as checkpoints and healing you and your god powers completely. And that's where the gameplay evolves. Within each region is a respective god power that can grant Thor limited use of special abilities. Some of these abilities include creating decoys with Loki's decoy, increasing your speed with Freya's speed, or regaining some health with Frigg's healing. You can cycle left and right through your powers with all 4 trigger buttons and activate the ability using the A button. During bosses, it is important to use these strategically, or else you'll end up hurting your chances of success. Except, I actually didn't realize until after I beat the game that I was missing a power, Heimdall's shield. But, as this is the Valhalla Edition, once you've beaten the game, Valhalla mode unlocks a boss rush mode. And although that may sound like the ultimate challenge for someone who has mastered this game, I'm nowhere near close to being good enough for that. Valhalla mode does give you access to a full health bar and all of the god powers, so you won't need to collect them or worry about having collected them in your actual normal playthrough. As I love the freedom of choice this game gives you, there are also some glaring issues in regards to gameplay. One of them being that some areas of levels are so hidden that it's almost impossible to realize their sections even after you've passed by them several times. Another issue is that with Murmur's Well, there are some instances where you'll pass by it, but not need to use it. However, dying in a stage requires you to start back at the beginning of the level. And once you're set back to the beginning of the level, all your progress isn't there anymore, which means that if you don't want to do all of that again, now you have to activate Murmur, even though you might need him later, when you're actually in danger, because once you've used Murmur, it can't be reused until you've left the area and come back. But one major issue stems from combat. This is specifically because Thora doesn't have invincibility frames. Now, although having Heimdall's shield does make Thora invulnerable for a few seconds, that's only as a momentary ability. When Thora gets hit, she tends to bounce off in another direction, and I've had a lot of deaths due to being pushed into another hazard or enemy's attack. This will tend to happen in some boss battles, causing some battles to feel very unfair and unfun. As soon as you're treated to the overview of the first level, I think anyone will be mesmerized by how beautiful this game looks. Almost about everything was hand-drawn. The animations, the scenery, the designs of the Jotun, especially the Storm Jotun Hagalaz, are a spectacle to look at. The world and visuals keep my eyes open, especially with very subtle music tracks and sound effects that build upon the ambience and loneliness of the story. The music doesn't really do much for me personally, but it's nothing that I dislike or that bothers me when hearing it. The only issue I have in regards to presentation is the camera. When the camera zooms out and provides you with the scenery of the vast areas of view to explore, it can be glorious eye candy. But during certain battles and in certain areas, the camera tends to zoom out so much that it becomes difficult to see Thora. This in turn can make playing in docked mode a lot more difficult in comparison to handheld mode. Jotun is an amazing experience with a bit of issues. However, those issues aren't always present and don't always hinder the overall gameplay. Just the art that's presented further influenced me to continue throughout this game, even when I wanted to quit. For these reasons, I can definitely say Jotun Valhalla Edition impresses the gods, which is why I'm giving it 3.5 stars out of 5. Again, I'd like to thank the team from ThunderLotus for providing us with a review code. Tell us what you think about Jotun Valhalla Edition down in the comments below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you can click that lovely red button below the video. And if you're feeling generous, you can head on over to sourcegaming.info and click the donate tab to be taken to the Patreon page. As always, remember to return to the source for more reviews and information you can't get from anywhere else.